Welcome Gold participants from around the world. I'm Fleur Bickford, Program Director and MC for Gold Learning. I'm here today chatting with Carol Gray about her upcoming presentation titled Where Should We Dig? Not All Gold is Buried Under the Tongue. So Carol, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So I am excited to hear more about your presentation, but before we get to that, I'd love if you could tell our delegates a little bit more about yourself and your professional journey.
I'd be happy to. I think that my journey began probably with the births of my own children, who are ages 42 and 39 at this point. So that got the fascination part started. And around that time, I started attending births as a labor support person. The word doula had not yet been coined in those days to describe that kind of labor support work, but essentially that's what I was doing. I was that person in my family and in my social group that got asked to help out at births. Time went on, and I continued to do that and eventually began doing it professionally around the time that I could start calling myself a doula, and at least a few people would know what that was. I've been a body worker for 26 years, and so I've done that concurrently with being a doula, and ultimately I got an opportunity to apprentice, and I practiced as a home birth midwife in Portland, Oregon for about 12 years rather. Sometimes in my professional life, I wondered how the various pieces, the things that I was doing, for example, being a childbirth educator and some other things, how it all was supposed to fit together. It didn't always make sense. For a while, the title that I gave to myself when people would ask me what I did was, well, I'm a massage therapist who also goes to births. Again, because the word doula had not yet been invented, and that was kind of a bulky title for what I did. But ultimately, it has started to make sense to me, and I'm very excited that I've developed techniques over the years to use craniosacral therapy skills to help expectant and new mothers and also their babies. That's the population I've been seeing all along, and those are the. I guess I had to adapt the skills that I was learning for other people to work with that population. So that's essentially my professional journey, although I've been teaching craniosacral therapy now for about 9 years, and because of that I had to give up my midwifery practice. I didn't burn out, but the demand for my classes grew so much that I've been unable to provide continuity of care for women who deserve it, and given where I live, my community is very well served by home birth midwives, so it's not like I was the only one in town and I had to leave everybody without a midwife. So it's worked out really well, and I think that the work that I'm doing as a body worker to help mothers and babies, and the work that I'm doing teaching that body work to other people is ultimately more important to me. So that's the shortest version that I could come up with of my career trajectory.
Okay, thank you, Carol. It's fascinating to hear about your journey. So one of the things that we're excited about this year with the Gold Lactation Conference is the fact that we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. So one of the questions that has been really interesting to hear the response to from our speakers is, what is the biggest change you've seen during your career? There's, obviously you've been working with moms and babies for quite some time. So I'm curious what you've noticed over the years as being kind of the biggest change.
I would say that there are a couple of things, and they're linked. When I was in massage school 26 years ago, my intention was to do end-of-life care. I had this idea that people who were dying were not necessarily getting gentle, loving touch, that many of the things that they experienced touch-wise, at least in the medical arena, were unpleasant or painful. And I wanted to do something about that. So I went to massage school, and I imagined that I'd have this fabulous career working with people at the end of life. But when I set up practice, the people who showed up were pregnant. And that was mainly what happened. And so I guess by default, or just in terms of who came for treatment, or maybe I saw young women for treatment who then wanted me to help them give birth, and so I ended up being a labor support person for them. And so the one thing that I did not predict in my in my future was that it would be possible to practice under a massage therapy license and have an entirely pediatric practice. Now, I have a general practice because I really enjoy the variety. I like seeing some older people and some men and people who are not women in the childbearing year and who are not babies and children. But honestly, if I wanted to, I could have a 100% infant practice and be full. And that's something that has been really astonishing to me, and I could never have predicted that way back when I was getting the massage therapy license and in school. So the thing that's linked to that is that I've seen a big change in my pediatric clientele. The the ratio of newborns to children of all other ages is dramatically tipping. We're seeing lots and lots of newborns, both in my private practice and in the free clinics that I'm associated with. And and feeding issues have become the #1 reason that people are coming to us. I would say 6, 7 years ago, it was feeding issues were definitely among the reasons, but they weren't the most frequent reason. And now feeding issues are outpacing everything else. And I don't think that that's necessarily that all of a sudden babies have more feeding issues now. It has more to do with awareness. So I think that that is probably the biggest change. Those are the two biggest changes, that there's acceptance of pediatric body work, and that feeding issues are at the top of the list, at least in my world.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of us are seeing that there is a lot more acceptance and awareness, which is fantastic. But I think sometimes too, those of us that are seeing an increased acceptance and awareness are the ones who actually work in that field. When you look further
Yeah.
afield, there's people who, they're like, body work, what's that? So, loving that we're able to get a little more information out there. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of a sneak peek into your presentation and share with our delegates what they can expect from your presentation and what you hope they'll be able to take away from their presentation back to their own practices.
I think the most important thing is pretty obvious in the title, that when babies have feeding issues, those issues are not necessarily about tongue ties. Or they may have issues that contribute to feeding problems that are occurring at the same time as a tongue tie, and that getting hands on these babies, as opposed to simply looking at them or taking a history and evaluating the clues that way, that actually putting hands on babies is a great way to evaluate and figure out what's going on. And I guess that's the most important thing. That, and the fact that the body work that most of us are doing, this incredibly gentle, light touch body work, may be incredibly helpful for these babies. And at the very least, it won't hurt, because we're not pushing very hard when we touch them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you. And it's been a pleasure having you chat with us today. For our delegates who are listening, you can hear much more from Carol in her presentation titled "Where Should We Dig? Not All Gold is Buried Under the Tongue," which is available as part of the Bodywork add-on package. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and have a wonderful day.